Hey YouTubians, it's Tony here from We Try Anything. The channel likes try anything, so you don't have to. In today's video, we're going to be looking at another watch from the Casio collection that some people think is ugly and others, like myself, think looks great. The watch in question is what I would apply the term as beauty in the eye of the beholder, with this watch being the Casio DW-291H digital watch, which has a module number of 3484. So as usual, we'll be looking around the Casio DW-291H, highlighting some of the materials used, the design of the watch, and mentioning some of the sizes along the way. We'll then go through some of the functions that this watch has on offer, pop it on our wrist, and say what it's like to wear, and give you our final thoughts on this watch. As always, there will be links to the instructions of this watch in the description box below, and an Amazon affiliate link if you wish to find out more about the watch online. It goes without saying that this watch has seen some action, as you can see here. I must admit that in this instance it wasn't with me, as the Casio DW-291H you see featured here is a second-hand eBay purchase. Now if you're not subscribed to the channel, then I'll quickly explain that the main reason I like to feature watches purchased from eBay is that it gives you an idea of how these watches wear over time. Now in this instance you can see that the case has been the recipient of a fair few scratches, and I'm not sure what has happened to the strap, but you can see here that it has either caught on something or been damaged by being melted or something like that. And I've got to say, it has got to be one of the worst examples that I've featured on this channel of wear or how these watches have worn. Now it does, to me, I don't find a problem. I mean, I was going to change the strap to another genuine authentic strap from Casio, but I thought I would show how these watches do wear, so you do get a very good idea of how the Casio 291H would stand the test of time. And to me, I still do think that it doesn't detract from the watch. If anything, it adds a little bit more personality or a little bit more character to this watch, because it has had a few knocks and bangs over its time. Now the other thing to mention here is that the Casio DW-291H is also available in a few different flavours, which I'm showing you here. And as you can see, that it does have a few different colourings, with the standout one for me being the one with the cream strap and darker case. So with all that out the way, let's take a closer look at this watch that we have featured here. First of all, let's mention the size of this watch so you can see if this watch is for you and your wrist. The case size, you are looking at 47mm from the extrusion there to the extrusion on the right there. And if you want to include those very unique looking pushers in the pusher case housing, you are looking at just approximately or just slightly over 50mm from what would be there to what would be there on the right. So it might not suit all wrists, but what I'll do, I'll show you later on in the video how this watch would look on my 6.5-inch wrist. Now depth wise, just turning the watch onto its side, you are looking at about 14mm. Look to look, or top to the bottom of the watch, I've measured from there and I've measured from there. You are looking again at about 50mm approximately. And while we're at it, the inner lug width, where these integrated straps here are affixed to the watch, you are looking at 18mm from there to there. Now while we're talking about the straps, we might as well just look at them a little bit more in depth. Materials wise, the straps are made up of a black resin plastic, and as you can see, they can get damaged. I mean, they will pick up marks and stuff like that, but in terms of what you see here, this is probably the most extreme example that I have featured on this channel. But in terms of design, as you can see here, it's got a singular rib, and also you do have these little extrusions here, which I would imagine would aid to gripping on the wrist. And also you do have a very nice resin strap stay here, as well as a plastic matte black pin and buckle. Now as you can see, the case here, without any doubt or without any shadow of doubt, is plastic and is prone to scratching. Now with this example, this does have what would be a metallic effect paint on what would be a plastic outer case, and again, with that being the fact, I mean, I would imagine if this was black, you probably wouldn't highlight the scratches as much, but here you can see the paint is coming away. But again, this is probably one of the worst examples I've shown, and to me, I don't think it detracts from the look of the watch. And if anything, I'd probably daily wear this watch more so over than something that is brand spanking new, just for fear of getting it scratched. But here you can see someone's already done that for me, and I wouldn't have any problems wearing this watch on a daily basis. The rest of the case is made up of a black plastic, plus there are those unique pusher housings. Now I have watched a few reviews on YouTube that mention how these pusher housings are not very nice and take away from the overall look of the watch. But for me, I think it makes the watch look a bit more distinctive and builds in a bit more character to, or the bit more tank-like overall look and feel to this watch. And if anything, I mean, I've got to say, it reminds me of what a robot called Robot in Lost in Space, where you can see the arms do resemble the arms on that robot. And Lost in Space was a science fiction TV show in the 1960s. And if you look at the arm design of Robot, you can see why I get reminded of it. Now, talking about the design, I have to say I do love the way this watch looks, and that's just pure and simple. And as I've said earlier, that while it doesn't appeal to some people, for me, I think the Casio DW-291H was that very heavy duty utilitarian presence to it. And while it doesn't have a lot of protection qualities that the G-Shock range of watches do, I am sure that, as you can see here, that the DW-291H can survive a fair few knocks. Now, moving on to the case back, it is business as usual for Casio. You've got the 4 Phillips screws here, which affix what would be the case back to the watch. And obviously, once you undo them, you've got access to the module as well as the battery. Now, the battery in this will last up to what would be 10 years from brand new. And that does power a quartz movement, which has a plus and minus of 30 seconds accuracy per month. But as you can see on the back, it just mentions the water resistance. Obviously, that it's a stainless steel case back, and the water resistance being 20 bar or 200 meters, which I think is fantastic on a watch of this price point. Now, carrying on with the front of the watch, and you have to agree with me that it does have that substantial look and feel to it. The dial window, now if you look on the Casio website, it mentions that it is a mineral glass, but if you look on, say, Amazon, it does mention it being acrylic. Now, this watch, as you can see on the glass, has picked up some scratches, and I'm just a little bit, I mean, when you tap it, it does feel a little bit more substantial than if you were to tap that. But again, I can't really comment. I mean, if Casio say on their UK website that it is a mineral glass, then that's what I'm going to say. But again, I'll refer to the actual web page that I've got the information from for this, just so you can see for yourself. Now, the design of the main display just means business to me, as there really isn't anything taking your eye away from the main part of telling the time or featuring just information such as a stopwatch and stuff like that. The typeface is easy to read at a distance for what would be the main time and the date, what you've got listed towards the top. Plus, the layout of the information is just so logical. That's what I mean about it just meaning business. There's no fuss, no drama. It just displays what you need to know. The only aspect of the display that I feel may be a little bit harder to read is the top right hand corner of the watch, where the analog part of the display is, or the analog looking part of the display is situated here. And I'll just move in a little bit closer. I do find it a little bit of an afterthought compared to the rest of the display, and I understand that the main purpose of this is to display the main local time in whatever mode you're in, just like other Casio watches such as the AE 1200 and the AE 1000W watches. But I just wish that maybe they used this space for something else. But again, it's not an issue for me. I mean, it doesn't really take away from the design of the watch. I just find it, maybe if they made them a little bit thicker so it's a little bit easier to read. But again, that's my only gripe with this display. Now, moving on, there is a nice small amount of animation to this watch. Now, if I just quickly go through the modes, you can see it just flickers by, and I do quite like that. It just gives a little bit of dynamism to the overall display on this watch. And it just mentions, in this instance, you can see measuring up to 10 seconds, then it'll start disappearing for another 10 seconds, which is quite a nice little indicator of time elapsing. Now, the decals printed onto this case, or the decals printed onto the front of the watch, don't shout as they normally do. I mean, obviously, they've used what would be muted colours with reds and whites here, just indicating just what the functions of each of the buttons do, which is nice. It doesn't have what would be, like, I'll show you this example here, illuminator and 10-year battery and stuff like that. The only thing it probably would have, which is it's quite worn away or eroded, would be that it's 200 meters water resistance, and I do like that. I do think it's quite restraining, and it doesn't take away from the overall design of the watch. As with a few digital Casios that I've recently featured on this channel, this Casio here, the LCD display does have one other shortfall, and that is more evident when you start to turn the watch away from your general view. And as you can see here, it's the ghosting. Now again, I can read that the time, it's now 10:43, and most people probably wouldn't look at the time at such an acute angle, but I just thought I'd mention it because some people, you know, if you are in a meeting, as I do kind of give you the example of being in a meeting, you just want to have a quick cheeky look at the time just to see how long the meeting's been going on for, and you can't really see it without, unless you just slightly start to turn your wrist, giving you that more intentional fact that you have got to turn your wrist to look at the time. So again, only a very small gripe with this watch, but other than that, the display, it just means business. Very easy to read and very easy to understand. Now the final thing to mention about the display is its backlit LED illumination. Now I'm going to move it over to the left and show you a clip to the right, and as you can see to the right, it does show it really well. Now I believe that there is 2 LED backlights here which are orange in colouring. Now you can see it does, even under the studio lights, you can see there's a slight change to the background when I do press the illumination on this. Now it's not as bright as what the camera is showing, it's just a little bit dimmer, but you can easily read the time in darkness and semi-darkness. Plus this watch will also allow you to change the illumination duration between 1.5 seconds and 3 seconds as well. So it is a fantastic little feature to this watch. Now, as well as the illumination, this watch can also feature the time in 12-hour and 24-hour formats, known as military time in the USA, daylight saving time, and an automatic calendar that once set up can take into account things like leap years, and that will go up to 2099. Now finally, on the main screen you can also change the time for up to 4 different set world times. So if you wanted to quickly view the time in another part of the world, it can be easily done so from the main timekeeping mode, so which I'll just quickly show you here. You just press this button down to the bottom, and obviously I've got it set for New York. You got it set again for London, because I haven't really gone through this watch changing it, any of the options. I'm going to show you that, how to do that in the tutorial video. And again, you know, set for Paris, and then I'll pop it back to what will be my main local time, with it being set for London. Now, as well as these little features I mentioned, this watch does have a few other modes which I'm going to quickly talk about. As you can see here, this watch has got world time built into it, so you can, on the main timekeeping mode screen, you can feature up to what would be 4 time zones or 4 cities. But if you start to go through the main timekeep or the main world time mode, this will allow you up to 31 time zones, which are 48 cities plus a coordinated universal time as well. So I'm just quickly going through Madrid, Paris, etc. Now in each of them you can also, if they honor what would be daylight saving time, you can also activate that as well by a long press, and as you can see there, it's just quickly added an hour there and indicate that a daylight saving time is active. And you can also just turn it off if you wish to do so, if they are more honoring what would be more known as standard time. But there is quite a few cities that you can go through, and a few different time zones that are featured within this module. Also, as well as that, you've got what would be a 5 daily or what would be 1 time alarms, and also it does feature an hourly signal, which once activated will go off on the hour every hour. You just get like a beep just to indicate that the hour has transpired. It also features a what would be a countdown timer. Now the measuring unit, as you can see here, is a 1/10 of a second. The countdown range, you can set it up to 24 hours. So the start range would be what would be a second, and it will allow you to set it up to a countdown range of 24 hours, as I mentioned. So I'll just quickly stop that and just reset it. Stopwatch wise, you are looking at a 100th of a second, and as you can see here, I'll just quickly show you, it will show you the seconds going up and down on the graphic display. It has a measuring capacity where it will go up to 24 hours, and the measuring modes are elapsed time, which you can see here, and also obviously you can see a split time as well, and it will feature first and second place times, which I'll show you a little bit more about once I do a tutorial video on this watch. Now with all that out of the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this watch on my wrist and say it's like to wear, and give you some of my final thoughts. Now here it is on my 6.5-inch wrist, and I've got to say I really do like this watch. It is very heavy duty, tank like in terms of its appearance, and with it being 50mm from the pusher, from the left hand pusher to the right hand pusher housing, you can feel it on the wrist. There's no getting away from that. I mean, that's only my example, it may be a little bit different for you, and it does sit quite well on this wrist. It's quite comfortable, there's nothing pinching in or anything like that. It is a nice watch to wear, and that's what I say about this watch. It is a very heavy duty daily wearable watch, with the only thing being the pushers just poking out a little bit. But again, for some people it wouldn't be a problem, and for me it certainly isn't a problem. I do like the way this watch wears. Again, you get used to that wrist inhibition, and it's only minor. I mean, obviously I can just feel it with the folds of my skin, but again, I just think with the design of this watch, it's something that definitely stands out on your wrist, and it's just one of them ones that, as I've mentioned, it is definitely beauty in the eye of the beholder. And with this watch, I really do like the look of this watch. And if you are into something that's a little bit more distinctive, a little bit more standout, and has a ton of features to boot, and it's not very expensive. I think it's around the £40 mark on Amazon. I mean, again, that just depends on whether they have it on offer or anything like that. It's a winner from me. So it gets a thumbs up from the We Try Anything channel. So I hope you like the review of this watch, and if you did, then give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more watches from the We Try Anything channel, then click on the subscription button below. And thank you for watching this review, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.